Early in-person voting for the high-stakes Georgia Senate runoffs begins on Monday. Meanwhile, over 1 million voters have reportedly requested mail-in ballots. State election officials say thousands have already been returned. The election will determine control of the U.S. Senate. Democrats are hoping to continue their winning streak in the state. Joe Biden became the first presidential Democratic candidate to win there in 28 years. But Republicans are raising doubts about the integrity of Georgia's electoral system. For more on this, let's bring in Tia Mitchell. She's a Washington correspondent for the Atlanta Journal-Constitution and joins us now. Tia, good to see you. What kind of turnout do you expect to see in Georgia's early voting, and how do you expect that could compare to the numbers that we saw last month during the presidential election?
Well, we expect there to be some drop-off, of course, because runoffs, there's always a tough time getting people to turn out at the same volume than they did for a general election. However, we do think that Georgia's runoff turnout will be larger than maybe a more traditional runoff, where the stakes aren't so high and the national attention isn't so intense. There were roughly 5 million votes cast in Georgia in the general election. Again, there will be drop-off, but compared to statewide runoffs in Georgia, we think that this runoff is going to be a record.
Well, it literally will determine the control of the Senate and what President-elect Biden and Vice President-elect Kamala Harris are going to be able to do. Speaking of which, President-elect Biden will travel to Atlanta next week to campaign for both John Ossoff and Raphael Warnock. One of your colleagues, Greg Bluestein, writes that it signifies a, quote, sea of change in Democratic strategy. What's behind this?
Well, we think that Democrats have decided that instead of kind of running from perhaps the more progressive arm, running from candidates that don't have that universal appeal because of partisanship, they have to embrace every member of their party and try to get every vote. And that is a shift. That's something that, leaders like Stacey Abrams have advocated for, that Democrats should not, try to appeal to the center, but should instead broaden their base by appealing to anyone who's open to giving them a listen. And that means embracing everyone who's willing to come and campaign on behalf of these two Democratic candidates. So it's not just Joe Biden who's coming, it's Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren and Cory Booker. It's saying that if you're a Democrat, we're not going to shy away from you because we think conservatives might have a problem with you or criticize us. It's saying, we're going to, anyone who wants to campaign and who we think can appeal to a segment of voters, come on down to Georgia, we'll have you.
That is a change. All right, Tia, I want to talk to you about alleged voter suppression in Georgia. A lawsuit brought by Black Voters Matter, the Rainbow Coalition, and Transformative Justice Coalition argues that Georgia unlawfully purged 200,000 legal voters from the rolls. And on Red and Blue, Jason Shepard, chairman of the Cobb County Republican Party, told my colleague, Elaine Quijano, that they were knocking on doors to check that registered voters were, in fact, living there, which struck me as remarkable and intrusive. What more can you tell us about both the voter suppression lawsuit and the effect that efforts like these are having on voters in Georgia?
Well, so voter purges have been a concern in Georgia for Democratic groups and progressive groups and voter rights groups. That's an issue that was even brought up during the 2018 election cycle when Stacey Abrams was running for governor. And again, it was brought up again by these voting rights groups based on a purge that occurred in 2019. And what they're alleging is that voters were purged because the state decided that they had not, responded to postcards about updating their information, and then they didn't participate in a couple of elections. But what these groups are saying is that these people are still Georgia residents. And just because they don't respond to a piece of mail or decide to participate in an election or two doesn't mean that they aren't eligible to vote and that they should therefore remain on the voter rolls. I do think it's interesting that, Republicans and election officials are knocking on doors. In theory, people can move, people cannot be home, people can change addresses. there are a lot of different reasons why someone can still be eligible to vote, but not necessarily matched up to the address on file. And so it'll be interesting to see if that holds up in court as like a legitimate way to defend why a voter was purged or not. Because what these voter groups are saying is that they checked and that 2 out of 3 of the people who were purged in that 2019 decision are actually Georgia residents. And that's the thing. It's not about matching them up to an address. If you're a Georgia resident, you should be able to be on the voter rolls in Georgia.
Makes sense. All right. I want to talk to you about ad spending in Georgia. This runoff election has almost exceeded a record $400 million. Which party has the cash advantage? I know that nationally everybody's pouring everything, Republicans and Democrats, into this race. But do you think that money is going to be the key to victory there in these 2 Senate seats?
Well, I'm based in Washington, but I, of course, am keenly, in tune in Georgia. And what I'm starting to get a feel from the Georgia voters I speak to, that it's starting to become oversaturation. They turn on the TV or they log on to social media or YouTube, and every single ad appears to be or seems like a political ad. And so it does get to the point, I think, that voters start tuning it out. We know that, yes, ad spending can help encourage voters. It can help with messaging. It can help shape public opinion about the candidates. But we know this election hinges on turnout. It is less about the messaging. It's more about turnout and which party is going to get its voters motivated to return to polls between now and January 5th, again, because this runoff is not something that most voters are used to participating in. So we're already surpassing 400 million. We've heard $500 million, if not higher. Again, the airwaves in Georgia are flooded with political ads, but the key is which party is going to turn out their voters.
It always comes down to turnout. Tia Mitchell, thank you.